There's been plenty of talk about Lewis Hamilton leaving Mercedes, but what we didn't realise is that George Russell, the Silver Arrow's de facto saviour, is on the verge of falling off his seat. Sir Lewis moving to Ferrari has been one big, beautiful distraction that has swept the fragility of Russell's spot under the rug. Not anymore, because we're talking about it today. Andrew Benson believes George Russell's intense hunger for success since joining Mercedes led to his error-filled race in Canada earlier this month. During the Canadian GP, Russell pulled off a surprising pole in Q3, matching Max Verstappen's lap time but securing the top spot by setting it first. Unfortunately, he couldn't turn this second pole position into a victory amid the unpredictable Montreal weather, making too many mistakes along the way for him to ever have a shot at victory. Russell finished P3 behind Verstappen and McLaren's Lando Norris in the race. Critics were quick to pressure him for not converting the pole position and questioned his race management skills. Some even doubted if he could step up as the team leader after Lewis Hamilton's departure at the end of the year. In a BBC Q&A, Benson gave his support to Russell, suggesting that the young British driver's limited opportunities for success have been a major factor behind his multiple errors. The sense was that Russell, starved of success for so long after more than 2 difficult seasons at Mercedes, was perhaps overreaching in his quest for a long-awaited victory. But the data set of races when he has been fighting at the front is so small that it would be wrong to assume that this is an inherent characteristic of him as a driver. Let's not forget that he was flawless in his delivery of a win in Brazil in 2022. There is, therefore, no obvious reason why Russell could not lead Mercedes next season after Hamilton leaves. Others aren't as supportive as Benson, though. Former F1 driver Ralf Schumacher thinks George Russell's future with Mercedes could be at risk as soon as now if Max Verstappen leaves Red Bull, that is. Schumacher, who previously raced for Jordan, Williams and Toyota, pointed out that Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff is a known admirer of Verstappen. This admiration could potentially create problems for Russell, who is set to lead the Brackley-based team in 2025. With Mercedes protégé Andrea Kimi Antonelli likely to step up from F2 next season and already seen as the future of the team, Ralf Schumacher believes that if Verstappen becomes available, Mercedes would act quickly to pair them together. He told Sky Sports Germany, "This is the ideal time for Antonelli to gain experience. If Max Verstappen really decides to leave Red Bull, I can imagine that there will be a seat for him at Mercedes. Then it could be rather bad for George Russell. He is or was a super talent, but he also makes a lot of mistakes. If a world champion is on the market, I can imagine that George Russell's job could also be in danger." Ralf Schumacher, pointing to the frequent mistakes as a weakness for Russell, feels that if Verstappen had been in the Mercedes in Montreal, he would have earned the victory in dominant fashion. Russell quickly acknowledged his errors at the circuit Gilles Villeneuve, where he finished third. But Schumacher argues that with Lewis Hamilton leaving for Ferrari at the end of the year, the 8-time Constructors' champions will need a world champion to lead the team moving forward, and that isn't George. Mercedes would have won the race in Canada with Max Verstappen. That's a clear case. "Max is the driver who makes the big difference," he said. "Mercedes has had a long dry spell and urgently needs a world champion to get back to the front." Verstappen is also a guy who comes across as very conservative, pleasant and sporty. Accordingly, I could imagine that Toto Wolff and Mercedes would do a lot with him and would do a lot for him. When Mercedes decided to replace Valtteri Bottas with George Russell for the 2022 Formula One season, it was clear that Russell was meant to serve an apprenticeship alongside Lewis Hamilton before eventually taking over as the team's lead driver. Hamilton's decision to exit his Mercedes contract a year early and move to Ferrari for 2025 accelerates the timeline for Russell to be fully ready to assume that responsibility. It's legitimate to question whether Russell has done enough to prove he's ready for this role. Russell still shows signs of imprecision or clumsiness in the heat of battle. While he's capable of executing brilliant overtaking moves like he did on Hamilton in Canada, despite initial doubts earlier this season, it appears that Max Verstappen's long-term commitment to Red Bull is almost a sure thing. This tells us that Toto Wolff, who had been attempting to attract Verstappen to Mercedes, has not succeeded in his public courting. As of now, it sounds Wolff is searching for a replacement for Lewis Hamilton. But former Aston Martin strategist Bernie Collins suggests that there might be a glimmer of hope for the Silver Arrows. Like most Formula One drivers, Verstappen's contract with Red Bull isn't a unilateral employment agreement. Collins elaborates that there are specific clauses attached that could potentially lead to his departure. She discussed this on the Sky Sports F1 podcast, saying, "We know there are caveats. We have heard little bits of caveats in his contracts that he can leave if certain conditions are met. Verstappen appears to favour staying with Red Bull for 2025, according to Collins. Yet, she adds that with the 2026 regulation changes approaching, Verstappen might reassess his options, especially if Red Bull's competitiveness wanes and they are no longer a race-winning team. While the specifics of Verstappen's contract are not publicly known, previous reports have suggested that his presence in the team is closely tied to team advisor Helmut Marko. Verstappen himself has stated that if Marko leaves, he will too. If Wolff manages to orchestrate a move that brings Marko to Mercedes, it could potentially prompt Verstappen to consider a quicker transition as well. I think I have been very clear that Marko always has to stay. Toto Wolff has stated that the upcoming F1 Spanish Grand Prix will showcase the extent of progress made by the team in addressing the main weakness of the W15. Mercedes had been optimistic about narrowing the gap to Red Bull after significant car design changes over the winter. But their 2024 car has faced challenges in delivering consistent performance across high and low-speed corners this season. Mercedes has found encouragement in the initial results from a new front wing introduced during the Monaco race. They believe this innovation could be crucial in addressing their weaknesses and improving their performance for the rest of the season. Following the unique track layouts of Monaco and Canada, Formula One will now return to a more conventional circuit in Barcelona. This circuit offers a blend of fast, medium and low-speed corners, providing a comprehensive test for the team's cars. Barcelona will provide a good test of our progress, he said. It has a mix of fast, medium and low-speed corners, a long straight and plenty of elevation change. Tracks that contain this wide speed range have been a weakness of ours so far this year. This weekend will therefore provide another opportunity to evaluate our progress through our recent updates, and we hope to build on the positive momentum from Montreal. Mercedes' performance in Canada came as a pleasant surprise, as both George Russell and Lewis Hamilton were competitive at the front throughout the weekend. This strong showing culminated in the team's best result of the season, with Russell finishing third and Hamilton securing fourth place. We have continued to make incremental gains across the past few races, Wolff added. It was encouraging, therefore, to take another positive step forward in Canada. To see that translate into our strongest team result of the season, so far, is a reward for everyone's hard work. The circuit Gilles Villeneuve is a unique track, however. It has a narrow range of corner speeds and, with a newly relayed surface, was something of an outlier compared to more traditional venues. We know our competitors will perform more strongly at upcoming races, so we will need to continue to work hard to consistently get ourselves in the fight for podiums and eventually race wins. Is George Russell's so-called starvation for success doing more harm than good for his career? Tell us what you think in the comment section down below. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Thanks for watching.